Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful 9th of December 2024. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, getting close to the holiday season. Got a chance to enjoy it myself, to see some of the lighting shows that takes place over here in Cincinnati. Uh, Last week I went to the Festival of Lights at the zoo. The other day I went to see the it's called a forest, uh, light the forest. It was basically a nature trail just outside where I live. And of course, last night I went to one of the bigger scenes in Cincinnati called Winterfest over at Kings Island, just outside Mason, which is about 35 minutes from where I live. Uh, so I had a chance to enjoy this last few days, and of course, with the holiday season, got a chance to take a lot of things in for my personally for myself. So, let's make the adjustment here. Here we go. So hope everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend. Happy Victory Monday to all of the winners out here from their victories yesterday. I'm just going to touch on a few games because we know we're coming down to playoff season, and I'm not interested in anything other than the ones that pretty much are distinguished for the playoffs. So I'm just going to just get right down to it real quick. The big one was, of course, the night game last night. Kansas City clinching the AFC West for the ninth straight year when they doinked in a game-winning field goal against the Los Angeles Chargers. So doinked in because it bounced off the upright, went in, and basically Kansas City, you know, wins the game, clinches their ninth straight AFC West title. Uh, Seems to me everybody's more upset with Kansas winning than their own team losing, and that's where you guys aren't legit fans. I quit trying to deal with you or talk to you a long time ago, just simply because that's who you are, that's how you are, that's how you like to act, that's how you like to be. So it is what it is at this point. But I've always said when you're a championship winning team, you find ways to win. Sometimes you do need luck on your side, is what happened in Kansas. But at the end of the day, Kansas was the better team of the two. The defense for the most part did the job on Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense. The only thing that surprised me out of that was, I thought they would pound the ball more. But now they got Isaiah Pacheco back with a two-headed monster now of Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I mean, they should. I thought they would do more running than they did, but I guess they wanted to win games in other ways possible. But it's what it is at this point. There's a reason why they've won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. That's why they're probably going to win it again. And basically, at this point, this is who Kansas City is. I mean, they just know how to make the plays when it matters most. They know how to make the moves that makes the team successful. Not more or less bringing in the biggest names possible and bringing in the best fits for the foundation they've laid out for the last several years. And that's why they're likely going to three-peat and more likely they're basically a win away from clinching the number one seed in the AFC again, and that's more likely going to happen. The road still is going to go through Kansas City when it comes to the AFC playoffs, whether everybody likes it or not. And I said this all along: when you're a championship winning teams don't beat themselves. You're going to have to legit beat them through an entire game. I mean, unless Kansas decides to no show like they did in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay, chances are you're not going to beat them. I mean, they're going to have a slip up or two during the regular season, which is doable because they've been in big games year in and year out. But at the same time, it comes to the big games when it matters most. You better be prepared to play the full 60 minutes against a championship winning team like this. And at this point, I can't see anybody that's legitimately going to do it. I mean, I'm not going to say you're going to pencil in a three-peat because there's still work to do, but they're on that path, and I probably will still favor them at this point. So don't get mad because Kansas City knows how to win. Be mad because you weren't good enough to beat them, and you're still trying to find reasons why you weren't. That's where the problem lies with the rest of the league when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're here. Everybody is down there until someone legit rises up and legit beats them. That's how it's going to be. Other games yesterday, it's Buffalo, St. Louis, excuse me, the Los Angeles Rams. I still think they're St. Louis. Los Angeles Rams beating Buffalo. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp just had a field day with the Bills defense. Of course, Josh Allen did everything he could to keep them in it. Of course, everybody thinks he's the MVP after that game. I won't not go that far yet because I think Patrick Mahomes might steal it from everyone for the rest of the way if he continues to just rise up. And basically, the MVP's on a platter. I mean, Lamar Jackson had his chances, didn't finish it. Josh Allen had a couple of stumbling points. Everybody's saying Saquon Barkley should be in the conversation. How often do you see a running back? The last running back was, of course, in 2012 when Adrian Peterson won it. But I'd like to say Saquon Barkley would win it, but the NFL these days don't like to give MVP awards to positions outside the quarterback position. We all know this. But for Buffalo, maybe with the loss in Kansas's win, I think they lost their chance at the 1 seed. They probably have to win out and Kansas lose out to get, I think, to salvage some kind of a tie, which Buffalo has the head-to-head tiebreaker due to that regular season win 2 weeks ago. But I think it's not going to matter. I think Kansas is going to take care of business the rest of the way and hold on. But Buffalo's defense got absolutely torched by Nakua, Kupp, and Matthew Stafford yesterday. Rams fighting for the NFC West title and for one of those NFC playoff spots, which basically at this point, if you win it's probably going to be whoever wins the NFC West between the Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams. That's what it's going to come down to. Whoever wins the West is going to get in because the NFC North is going to send 3 teams. That's going to be Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. And of course, the NFC East and NFC South winners are going to go in. That's how it's going to be. So, and of course, the game tonight over here in Cincinnati, it's the Bengals and the Cowboys. 2 teams that aren't going anywhere. Basically, one team is playing for stats. The other team is playing for, I don't know what the hell they're even playing for. But, the question is going to be who's going to show up, the Bengals defense or the Cowboys offense, because that's going to be the $1 million question. The Cowboys offense remotely shows up, they're going to win because I don't know if the Bengals defense has ever showed up during any game this season. That's what I've come to the conclusion of. I mean, they haven't even tried to put together the defense in the offseason. They haven't even tried to put together a roster that helps them. So, but they still have the quarterback and the 2 receivers. I think that gives them the edge for now. I think this has the makings of a 38-35 type ball game because, even the Cows' secondary is not all that great. When you have the 2 elite wide receivers like Cincinnati has, you're going to be putting up points. So you fantasy owners, especially if you have the quarterback and the 2 receivers out of Cincinnati, play them because you're going to milk some points and milk them big. I expect them to just run all over the place. Question is whether the Bengals defense has the balls big enough to stop the Cowboys offense. That's going to be the question. That's why I'm not even going to make a pick on this. So too many ways to go here. But I remind you, 2 years ago, Cooper Rush shredded the same defense in an early season game, and the Cowboys won. So that's not draw the conclusions that the Bengals are better than the Cowboys because of it. Because he outplayed that same quarterback in that game 2 years ago. I don't want to hear the excuses out of Cincinnati. Now, that takes care of the NFL talk. Of course, the big ruckus over the weekend, it was the college football playoff bracket. Okay, let me try and simmer this down because a lot of you guys are having your panties up a bunch, especially you morons in Columbus, which I'm going to piggy off a few of you guys here in a minute. Because I listened to what you guys had to say the other night. First of all, any playoff system we've had, college playoff system we've had over the last several years, you find something wrong with it. I mean, this team gets in, that team gets out. Oh, this team deserves to get in, not this team. Maybe just learn how to shut up and accept the results as they are, because I think for once, it was actually done right. Rankings aren't all that great. It was actually done right. I just want to get my device here real quick. I'm going to get a chance to see the matchups here. Because everyone's doing a bunch of this when it comes to whining about the college playoff bracket, especially in Columbus, which you guys don't have a leg to stand on because you guys quit against Oregon and you quit against Michigan. Think about that a minute for you guys over there in Columbus. Let's see, I'm going to pull this up. Okay, I got the bracket up. The buys. Oregon's going to get the first bye by default because of the number 1 seed, undefeated Big Ten champs. Georgia gets the 2 seed. SEC champs had a couple of rough losses, especially a big primetime game against Alabama where Carson Beck was just pitiful in the first half. Boise State with Alshon Gentry just running wild. And of course, the shock at Sunder's Arizona State. How about Guy Skidabo? The guys just ran wild in the last several weeks of the season, fully carrying the Arizona State to the last bye. I mean, now I'm looking at the rest of these matchups. The 8-9 is, of course, Ohio State, Tennessee. 5-12 is Clemson, Texas. 6-11 is Penn State, SMU. And of course, I'll get to that here in a second. And of course, 7-10 actually has basically a party in Indiana between Notre Dame and the University of Indiana. I mean, I think that one is going to make South Bend basically pack to the house and make a party thing like never before. Like, oh, this idiotic Bible thumpers they have in Notre Dame acting like it going to act out of their religious beliefs. Another topic for another day. I'm scrolling through this bracket. I don't have a problem with a lot of this because we can debate who deserves to be what seed. That'll always be debated. I've said all along, I'll point this to you guys in Columbus first. There was a podcast over the weekend by a well-known, respected lady I follow and a couple of other of those podcasters in Columbus she mingles with. The only thing they wanted to complain about was what took place a couple of weeks ago in Michigan, in Columbus, when Ohio State laid an egg and quit against Michigan on a nationally televised Saturday afternoon. Of course, you know what happened after the game. Flag planting. I guess they tried to flag plant. Ohio State decided to be a bunch of cowards and decided to start a fight for no reason at all because they don't know how to take loss like men. That includes the head coach, Ryan Day, and their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. Why are you talking about something that took place 2 weeks ago? It's over with. Move on. Y'all quit. Y'all didn't want to try and win the game. Your quarterback, Will Howard, blatantly tried to do everything he can to lose the game, which he did. And now you guys are complaining about being in the position you're in, saying you should be higher than Penn State for whatever garbage reason. If you didn't lay an egg at Oregon, and if you didn't quit against Michigan, there's no conversation. That's what you guys in Columbus fail to see. I listened to the podcast. That was just the biggest bunch of hunk garbage I've ever seen because you guys are still dragging on something that took place a couple of weeks ago when you guys need to just flat out shut up and let it go. But you guys don't know how to do it because you guys are living in Columbus. Plain and simple. But into this bracket, we finally got something interesting here. Maybe the seedings could be different for a few of these teams. I'm not going to get into that. But I think we talk about the actual 12 teams that got into this bracket. They got it right. This help over SMU should have got it over Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss. First of all, if you think Ole Miss deserves it over SMU, you need to get a drill hole in your brain and have your brain pulled out and see what's wrong with it because there's no way Ole Miss deserves a spot over SMU. Second of all, I've been trying to defend Alabama, but when you guys laid the egg at Oklahoma, you lost room to speak, so you don't deserve it there. South Carolina, don't even get me started there. I mean, this is what we're come down to at this point. Of course, the selling point was Dabo Swinney saying SMU deserved a shot. I guess the committee decided to listen. It is what it is at this point. I'm just ready to get these games out of the way because we're about to have a wild scene. You guys wanted to expand. You guys wanted to change. You guys asked for it. You got it. Because I got news for you. Give it about 5 or 6 years. There's going to be another change to this college playoff system. And you guys, especially in Columbus, are going to find something wrong with it. And you guys are going to whine like big babies. And you guys are going to be able to shut up. Maybe for once, if you guys just shut up, let the games be, and let the results be, you guys will be in a better place. But nobody in Columbus wants to shut up to save their lives. That's the problem. They're still whining about the quit job against Michigan. They're still trying to make excuses for why they couldn't beat Oregon. That's all needs to be said. I'm sorry. I'm not listening, and I'm not entertaining it. Just good luck against Tennessee coming up next Saturday night because you're going to have your hands full with them. You guys wanted a primetime game? You got it. Now shut up and be prepared to beat Tennessee. That includes the fan base and people in the administration. Because you guys whine worse than babies these days. Well, there's going to be more about the college football bracket I'll talk about later because this thing is going to get crazy. Of course, the big news came out earlier today that Georgia quarterback Carson Beck has some kind of elbow injury after the SEC title game against Texas, where I guess he can't feel the ball. No timetable set for his return. A blow if he has to miss anything regarding to this. But the fortunate thing for Georgia is they have the first round bye, so who knows? Maybe he'll be back for the will they play their first game of the college football playoff, which we probably will. But now, as a game against Texas, it's sort of weird to see Texas playing an SEC title game versus a Big 12 title game, which has everything all screwed up. Because we know what it's all about, the almighty dollar. Texas, of course, the years in the Big 12, with all that legendary battles they had with Oklahoma, amongst many others. Georgia, of course, known for Alabama's battles when Nick Saban was there. Of course, now Nick Saban is no longer there. Kirby Smart gets supposed to be gift wrapped at a trip, to win an SEC title game, but makes it harder than it should be because he still doesn't know how to coach a big game when it matters. That's the issue there. So, a lot of storylines going in this college playoff. I'll probably divulge into this closer because everything begins next Saturday. But everybody, please shut up. It's set. No reason to yap. No reason to complain. You guys lost room to speak a long time ago on some of this because it's done. It's over. Especially you guys in Columbus still bitching about the OSU Michigan game. Newsflash, you quit and you want to start a fight after the game. And I got news for you also about that game. There was no freaking way you have a room to speak about it because it's over with. Done, over, move on to Tennessee because you're going to have your hands full on the 21st. Now to some baseball news. Of course, get this out of the way. The big story here is the giant contract by Juan Soto signing with the New York Mets for $750 million over 15 years. Get ready because this is where we're heading toward in sports contracts. We haven't even started with this yet. But mind you, this is for a player who basically was playing for a bag when he got traded to the Yankees and led them to the World Series appearance and the loss to the Dodgers. He was basically a career 288 hitter, doesn't have the greatest fielding skills, can't run, doesn't do much other than that. Yeah, apparently, he has some ridiculous percentages when he plays at Citi Field, which is where the Mets play. But whoever put the stats up he did that against Mets pitching when he was playing for various other teams. I get it. The Mets, was gift wrapped a playoff appearance, largely because the NL East was sort of plateaued, especially the rest of the National League outside of the Dodgers and the Phillies, at least regular season wise. So they were gift wrapped a playoff appearance by default. Of course, the Braves are going to be coming back. The Cardinals are going to probably make a move or two to get involved. Several other teams are going to be in play. Of course, you still have the world champion Dodgers and a couple teams out west with the Padres, among others. So it's not a foregone conclusion that the Mets are going to be back in the playoffs anytime soon, especially with this contract for this so-called great player. So this is the Bobby Bonilla contract all over again in baseball, simply because we know what happened there with Bobby Bonilla. Not the greatest numbers, not the greatest athlete, and of course, they still have to pay him. Same thing's going to happen here. Give this thing about 5 to 6 years, and then everyone's going to be calling for this guy to be run out of New York. I mean, we know it's inevitable. Of course, I read somewhere earlier before I came on here, there was an issue with I guess it's, if I can read this correctly, with security involving his family, or I'm not even going to get into it, that drove his decision to go to New York, which I think is a bunch of, I'm not going to say it didn't happen or not, but I think it's a bunch of lies, because when you're given $760 some odd million over a 15-year period, you're going to take the contract. If you say you don't, you're lying, and I'm not entertaining it. We know why he left from the one New York team to the other, because they were paying the bag. I'll just say this, Yankees fans, I know you guys are upset, but 5 years down the road, you're going to be grateful that he left you because he wanted the bag, and the guy's going to be a middle of the pack player when the time comes in the middle of that contract, because he's going to feel the pressure to having to honor it once he hits the middle of that contract. You guys will be happy down the line. So he wanted to go to the Mets for the bag. Let him. I mean, let the delusional Mets fans act like they're going to do something of significance, because they were gift wrapped a playoff appearance this year, just because the National League just sort of plateaued and then dipped. That's what happened. I mean, I'll be surprised if they'll be back in the playoffs this season, because the National League's going to get real cooking here over the next few years, because key guys on key teams are going to be coming back within the next couple years, and we'll see what the Mets are really made of. Now, mind you, they gave up 46 runs in that 6-game series to the Dodgers, so I don't think Juan Soto is going to cure that. And of course, the other big topic new in the baseball world is finally, 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 after all this time, six-time All-Star, three-time Golden Glove winner of the right field, the great Dave Parker is going to be introduced in the Hall of Fame. There's some, I guess, some committee. I can't think of the name of it. I think 14 of the 16 people voted for him, so like 87%. It was a no-brainer. It was long overdue. Career 300 hitter, known for his years for the Pirates and the Reds. He played a few years here in the Reds. Was actually pretty solid from 84 to 87. One of the premier right fielders of his time. I mean, definitely belongs. The numbers back it up. The stats back it up. His impact certainly backs it up. I mean, people in Pittsburgh can tell you everything left and right. But it's a great day for him because he rightfully gets his place where he should have been all along, and that was the National International Baseball Hall of Fame. So kudos to Dave Parker. Congratulations. You got what you earned. You got what you deserved. It's been a long time coming. Enjoy it. Now, of course, before I get to the boxing bit segment, as touch on one last thing, going back to football. It was 44 years ago today on Monday Night Football, a game between I think it was the Dolphins and the Patriots, where before a field goal attempt was made at the end of the first half, the great Howard Cosell announced to the world the tragedy of John Lennon, who was shot. Guys, I don't even know the full details, but he was shot. Howard Cosell mentioned it during the telecast. Basically, him and at that time the commentator Frank Gifford basically didn't know how to go on after that. It's polarizing because that's one of the rare times you probably saw during that era a major tragedy take place during a sporting event or a major cultural event during a sporting event like that. So shows you how sports and culture interact at times. For Howard Cosell to announce this during the middle of a Monday Night Football telecast, just speaks to the volumes and, of course, the cultural impact. The legendary rock group back then, the Beatles, led by the great John Lennon, had on all of culture and all of society at that time. And it basically shows you just how fragile life can be if these sort of things happen. Of course, we talk about the price of fame, which I'll get to with a boxer later on. That sometimes comes with a price, and sometimes that price comes steep. Again, I still don't know the details years later. I was just 3 years old when this happened. But of course, it was 44 years ago today where Howard Cosell made that sad announcement that John Lennon was shot during the middle of a Monday Night Football telecast in front of a nationwide audience. Of course, Lennon was the key piece of one of the premier iconic rock groups to ever walk God's green earth, and the Beatles. And everybody follows the Beatles knows the story with us. So a sad day to remember, but of course it has to be brought up because of the impact that it had and ties how entertainment, culture, society, and sports sometimes can wrap into one and just take a life of its own. And that's what happened on that Monday Night Football game 44 years ago. Now I get to talk about my favorite subject, and that is a wonderful sports world of boxing. Lots of fights take place over the weekend, lots of history to talk about. But first, some news that broke just a minute ago. Just want to touch on this. Apparently, Tio Lopez is going to move up to welterweight to fight Boots Ennis. Spins off this supposed rumor that the top-ranked banner who promotes Tio, supposedly leaving ESPN because their contract won't be renewed, and they're supposedly going to DAZN where Boots Ennis is going to fight. Interesting matchup. Again, but the thing is, I think Tio's luster started to wore out a little bit, but I think Boots Ennis' luster has yet to really gain real steam at the moment because he doesn't have any quality wins. Tio hasn't done anything of significance since he decided to insult and disrespect Vasyl Lomachenko on and off the ring. I mean, he still does to this day. I saw him attack someone in a tweet and feel a need to attack Vasyl Lomachenko. While he's still trying to call for fights against Terrence Crawford and Tank Davis, two fights he doesn't deserve. Maybe he lost his balls when apparently at some fight he went to Terrence Crawford's face. And I guess Terrence Crawford smacked him silly, which I think Terrence Crawford should have done more than that. But Tio's luster has been dead. I mean, he feels a need to disrespect Vasyl Lomachenko's character. He feels a need to disrespect George Kambosos' character. I don't know where he's trying to get with this. Now he's going to be calls for fights with Boots Ennis, Tank Davis, and Terrence Crawford. So now he's going to get Boots Ennis. I wish him nothing but the best of luck because I think this might be the Boots Ennis coming out party. I think he gets to Tio at some point if this fight is made. I'm not holding my breath for it because I think Tio's going to find a way to cower out because that's who Tio Lopez is at this point. But as far as the back to the original topic of DAZN and Top Rank, they signed this contract. If after Top Rank leaves ESPN, get ready for some pretty darn good fights because Matchroom and Top Rank have made some pretty solid fights over the years. The most recent one being the 2-fight series between Josh Taylor and Jack Cottrell. We know the story with those two. And that this happens, get ready for some fascinating matchups. And I think it would be a good thing for that platform because a lot of the top promoters are on that platform right now. We talk about Matchroom, Top Rank, of course, Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions. I can't think of the promotion, the one that did the Magnificent Seven over the weekend. So promotions, they could probably get together, squash their differences, and make some pretty darn good matchups. So we'll see where that one goes. Sort of sad we had to see the end of ESPN, as a driving force of boxing because it's been that way for ever since I've been covering it and been following it. But it's what it is at this point. Now, speaking of that Magnificent Seven over the weekend, a solid fight took place between Brad Pauls and Denzel Bentley. I harped on the show last week about Denzel Bentley's redemption tour after a bad loss to Nathan Heedy. He comes back, gets a solid win over Derek Asazi and probably the knockout of the year where he hits him with an uppercut and basically Asazi's hand was hanging down and the right hand over the top that puts Asazi down and basically out. That which elevated Bentley to the number one contender for Janabek's 2 belts. He fights Brad Pauls, basically puts his number one contendership on the line for Paul's British title and a vacant European title. And basically, it really a pretty darn good fight. But I thought Bentley controlled the fight for the most part from start to finish. Outside of the middle rounds, where I thought Paul started to step up the aggression, Bentley just did anything and everything he wanted. Gets a decision win. Of course, he forced Pauls in the 10th, swallows his eye to get the decision. But Denzel Bentley's back. I think this time he's going to have a real good chance. I expect him to get the rematch against Janabek next year. Which way he's getting is because Carlos Adamek and Hazim Shiraz are cowards and they wanted a duck. We know this. But when it comes to Denzel Bentley, I think if he can get a title shot and find a way to beat Janabek, because I've never been hip on the Janabek bandwagon like a lot of the fans are, especially since the middleweight division sort of tanked after the Four Kings era. Nobody really stood out. Which was once the glamour division of boxing history. But the division is basically flat. I think Denzel Bentley has a chance to seize the belts from Janabek if they do go through this fight some point in 2025, is what I expect, because I think he's the mandatory for both of those titles held by Janabek. Remember, they had a fight a couple years ago where they fought and Janabek got the decision, but I thought Bentley acquitted himself well. Janabek was just a better fighter that night. And of course, the fight here in the States in Arizona was basically the rematch of a mismatch that took place last year. That was between Emmanuel Navarette and Oscar Valdez. Some fights are better off never having been made. This probably falls on that list. Because Navarette did anything and everything he wanted to do to Valdez the first time. And he did it again, except this time he finished him for good. And I say this for this reason. Oscar Valdez was never in Emmanuel Navarrette's league. Not saying Emmanuel Navarrete is a reincarnation of Julio Cesar Chavez or Marco Antonio Barrera or any of them guys. But Oscar Valdez was always tailor-made for Emmanuel Navarrete. It was shown in the first fight, and it's shown here again. I think this time, Navarrete says the hell with it. I'm getting rid of him, which he did in 6 rounds. Emmanuel Navarrete is a very unique fighter in those weight divisions. I mean, a tall, lanky fighter, which you don't see much there. Very unique style. Can mix it up, can box, can do a lot of things. He showed us display the 2 fights here against Valdez and basically did anything and everything he wanted. Of course, he had a lost a fight previously. I can't pronounce the Ukrainian fighter's name, but he got a nice bounce back here. And now they're talking about him fighting Oshaki Foster for a title unification or whatever it is, which I probably would favor Navarrete. But Emmanuel Navarrete, when I saw him beat Isaac Dope the first time, I said this guy is going to be a tough out. And I maintained it all the way through, and still sticks. He had the 2 fight series with Valdez. Maybe one fight was fine, but because Navarrete did anything and everything he wanted to, a rematch was clearly unnecessary. And I say it for one reason: when you wipe a fighter out like that, and I mean that's what Navarrete pretty much did, is anything and everything he wanted, wiped him out. The same thing was going to happen in the rematch. Valdez got a couple okay wins, fine. But I said all along, his last 3 big fights, Shakur Stevenson and the 2 here, I couldn't even count 4 rounds he legitimately won, because he basically just got everything done to him and then some. Lots of thrills, very action-packed fighter. But I think the poundings that those action wars sort of took its toll. Shakur Stevenson did everything he wanted to. Navarrete just copycatted it for the first fight, and of course the second fight, Navarrete did anything and everything he wanted to. So Emmanuel Navarrete just won a fight he had no business. Basically a fight that had no business taking place. When I heard the rematch was signed, I just said to myself, the fight's already over. Let's give Navarrete something bigger and better. Now they're talking about O'Shaquie Foster, which makes all the sense in the world right now. The winner of those 2 belts just basically is the top dog in that division, which I think I would probably favor Navarrete at the moment. Of course, the earlier fight, I'm not going to divulge, is Robeisy Ramirez looking like a freaking coward because apparently his eye got busted up and he basically quit like a coward and is making excuses. I'm not giving him time of day. Same guy beat him exactly 1 year before it, and he beat him again. He just can't accept the fact the guy that beat him was simply better than him both times. That's what I got to say. Now to a little historical aspect. Of course, it was about 16 years ago today that the boxing world said goodbye to one of the premier figures, maybe ever, the old mongoose Archie Moore. One of the premier punchers of our time, maybe top 5 all-time great light heavyweight. You're talking about a fighter who fought during the eras of Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali, which spanned almost about 4 decades. He fought Ali as Cassius Clay in the 60s, which is one of his final fights. He, of course, was the oldest fighter to win the world title at age 39 at that time, in any weight class. In any weight class, oldest fighter to win the title when he beat Joey Maxim, who came off the win over Sugar Ray Robinson. Archie Moore basically just did anything and everything he wanted to Maxim, just pounded him with right hands all night long, which was his bread and butter. To become the oldest fighter to win a world title at age 39 when he won that fight. Reigned as champion for 9 years. Basically, he fought twice for the heavyweight championship, against Floyd Patterson and Rocky Marciano. There's some wild controversies with Marciano I'm not going to divulge into. He did floor Marciano early, but Marciano just floored him 4 times. That fight was over. And of course, when he fought Floyd Patterson did anything and everything he wanted to do to Archie Moore. And of course, the capper was when he fought Cassius Clay at heavyweight, now known as Muhammad Ali. That one was over. Had him fought the great Ezra Charles 3 times. Of course, fought Joey Maxim 3 times. Fought a standout light heavyweight named Harold Johnson 5 times. Jimmy Bivers and Carlo Bobo Olson, who I'll get to here in a minute. Amassed a record of 186, 23, and 10 with 132 knockouts. Think about it. 132 knockouts in about 200 fights. No one's touching that. I mean, 100. Some sites have his record of different numbers, but the guy still amassed over 130 career knockouts. Think about it for a second. Of course, after his career, he became a trainer, trained Ali for a stint. Of course, known for what he did with George Foreman during his career, trained him during the first part and a big chunk of his second career, which helped Foreman in his comeback. And Foreman gives more credit just largely because Archie Moore was a fighter who fought well into his 40s. He finally retired at age 49 after he had the loss to Ali, then had a subsequent fight, which he basically won and said that was it. But Archie Moore, when you think of the premier light heavyweights today, and we think of all these all-time great light heavyweights and some of the great stories you hear, I recommend you search Archie Moore. I mean, this was a case of a guy who did it the hard way, took the long, hard road to get that title shot, which he did when he beat Joey Maxim to win it at age 39, and basically never lost that light heavyweight title in the ring. He basically was stripped of it because of boxing politics. And let me remind you guys in the community again, he had one belt. The one belt was winner take all, not the garbage we see today. One belt, winner takes all. The legit light heavyweight champion of the world, Archie Moore, basically just fought every chance he got. I mean, when you amass 132 career knockouts, I mean, you're fighting everybody. That's Archie Moore. Uh, you know, he trained Foreman, as I said, but his career in and out of the ring, second to none. You know, for you Googlers out here, Google Archie Moore. It's a very, very, very great read. Now, I mentioned a fellow named uh, Carl Bobo Olson. It was 69 years ago when he challenged the great Sugar Ray Robinson in Chicago. Ray Robinson had come off the tough loss to Joey Maxim. Actually, it wasn't really a loss. He was winning the fight. He basically was forced to lose a fight because he was about to die from heat exhaustion in extreme heat conditions, which saw 20 lives, pass away because of the exhaustion, and another 15 or 20 wind up in a hospital for dehydration. Sugar Ray Robinson, bar none, is the greatest pound for pound ever. I mean, I could point to 999,999 ways that he is. Maybe this one was probably number 1 million because he had come down from the light heavyweight loss to Maxim, and some people were calling for him to retire. So he takes the fight, is basically against a guy who he beat twice before. He fought for lower level belts because Olson was the middleweight champion of the world. Olson was one of those fan-friendly fighters, aggressive style that the fans love. Come at you, aggressive, good volume puncher. Delivered a beating to Ralph Tiger Jones. Won the middleweight title from Rocky Castellani way back when. Of course, he beat Randy Turpin for the title. Has wins over the standout stylist Kid Gavilan and beat Rocky Castellani before this fight took place. Basically, the fight was basically over in 2 minutes. Ray Robinson just came out, took care of business, barraged the guy. Fight was over at 251 in round 2. Sugar Ray Robinson wins the middleweight championship for a third time. And of course, as I said, the greatest pound for pound fighter ever. I'm going to point to every instance where he was or was the pound for pound of all time. We always say they check the boxes. He checks the boxes, and he checks it with a wide margin and blows it away. Of course, all of his fights are chronicled. Of course, Lamada, Fulmer. I could point to many, many more. After this loss, Olson went to fight Archie Moore for the light heavyweight title. Was basically stopped in that fight because Archie Moore just poured on right hands all night long. Of course, these two would have another fight. I think a few months later, Robinson knocks him out in 4 rounds. Basically goes 4-0 against Olson, and of course, solidifies his grace as the greatest ever in the pound for pound category. Sugar Ray Robinson was just a beauty to watch. I encourage everyone to watch the photos of what this guy did in the ring. Forget about, who's better, who's not better, the comparisons or whatever. Just watch the pure elegance and the pure greatness of Sugar Ray Robinson. And it was just a thing of beauty. I said it along. You guys, people call, Ray Leonard fast. You haven't seen Ray Robinson. You can call this guy fast, that guy slick. You guys haven't seen Ray Robinson. Pull up the footage. I'll let the footage dictate for itself. But it was 69 years ago today in Chicago where Ray Robinson just regained his stature as the top middleweight in the world at that time. In the one belt era, one belt, winner takes all, just obliterates Carl Bobo Olson in less than two rounds. Basically, the fight was over when it started. And the second round, it was just a barrage where Olson couldn't even defend himself. Down and out for the count. Party was over. Robinson's back on top. Of course, another one that took place, it was 40 years ago this week. This was in San Juan, Puerto Rico. This some of south of the middleweight division. This was Azumah Nelson and Wilfredo Gomez. In the deep root culture of Puerto Rican boxing, and especially Hispanic boxing, we think about the great Puerto Rican fighters. Maybe number one on the list is Wilfredo Gomez. I mean, you can say Wilfredo Benitez, maybe one. Go back to a guy like Carlos Ortiz, maybe an Edwin Rosario or a Hector Camacho. But widely regarded as the greatest Puerto Rican fighter of all time was none other than Wilfredo Gomez. He challenges Azumah Nelson. Azumah Nelson's a couple fights removed from a give and take fight with the late Salvador Sanchez, where he held his own until he was knocked out in the 15th round. Of course, Gomez himself fought Sanchez and just got the brakes beaten off of him. Came off a very, very complex and back and forth brutal fight with Lupe Pintor to win the featherweight championship before this. In a fight where basically it was an all-out war. Both guys give and take. Pintor had control for a minute, but Gomez found a way to gather himself and win it in the 14th round. But a bigger picture premise was starting to be seen here, that the price of fame and the lifestyle that Wilfredo Gomez lived outside the ring was starting to catch up to him. His biggest lockout was Pintor just made the mistake of starting to get complacent, and Gomez took advantage of it. In this particular fight, Gomez fights the guy known as the Professor, Azumah Nelson, probably the premier fighter from Ghana, the country in Africa. And Azumah Nelson just basically in my opinion, controlled the fight from start to finish. Gomez had his moments, had some moments with a left hook, but for the most part, I thought Nelson controlled the fight. But when you're in the guy's backyard, you never leave a fight to the judges. Azumah Nelson didn't do it. When the 11th round came, basically a first knockdown where basically a couple punches seemed like it missed, put Gomez down. Gomez thought it was a slip. The referee, Octavio Mayron, went ahead and counted him anyway, didn't buy into it. But the second he got up, Nelson charged him with two hard right hands that had Gomez bent over backwards. And I mean, physically bent over backwards. It's on the videos. Watch it. Bent over backwards, down and out for the count in the own backyard of Puerto Rico. And Azumah Nelson wins the featherweight championship of the world. You know, I remind you, there's a reason why Azumah Nelson went for the knockout. Because a fight where basically everyone thought Nelson had the fight won in the control. The three judges at ringside had Wilfredo Gomez winning. That's why you don't leave the fights to the judges. You get out there, you get the knockout, and you leave the country with a championship. Azumah Nelson did that to Wilfredo Gomez 40 years ago. Now, that's probably the end of Gomez as an elite level fighter. A year later, he fights Rocky Lockridge on free TV on NBC, where Lockridge basically controls him the same way Nelson did, but somehow Gomez's gift wrapped the decision. It was widely regarded as one of the all-time egregious decisions in boxing history. Of course, Gomez would lose the title after that and never regain that championship form. Now, his party lifestyle started to pile on and take its toll. You know, alcohol and drugs, well chronicled out there, no different than some of the other ones. Had some strange relationship that took place not too long ago. You know, he was trying to get out of, which the situation is just weird. But this fight basically ended Wilfredo Gomez as a top flight fighter in those weight classes, simply because everything in and out of the ring caught up to him. It basically, you could say it started with the Salvador Sanchez fight 3 years before in '81 in Las Vegas, where Sanchez has beat him from start to finish. To the Lupe Pintor fight, where it was basically an all-out war, give or take both ways. But basically, neither Gomez nor Pintor were the same again. Nelson basically finishes it with this. Yes, he got the win against Lockridge, but anybody knows that was a gift-wrapped decision to Gomez because the fight was basically in Puerto Rico, and basically Puerto Rico was not going to let Wilfredo Gomez leave that fight without the belt. So that was Wilfredo Gomez. For Azumah Nelson, one of the premier south of the middleweight fighters of all time, moves up to super featherweight to beat Mario Martinez in a highly disputed decision. From what I've seen, I thought he did eke it out. Fights the great Pernell Whitaker in 1990, loses a lopsided unanimous decision. And basically, no shame in that because Pernell Whitaker, you know, from 1993 to 1997, the best fighter in the world. And Pernell Whitaker was shutting everybody out at that time. Had the three-fight series with Jesse James Leija. Some weird turn of events I'm not even going to count the fourth fight because both guys were really past it. Weird 2-fight series where Gabriel Relis, and of course his end came really in '97 when he lost to Gennaro Hernandez in San Antonio. Middle of the fight was bizarre, not weird circumstances, but I'm not going to divulge into that. But the two times the featherweight champ, 2 times the super featherweight champ, one of the premier fighters south of the lightweight division, maybe the greatest fighter coming out of Ghana ever. We talk about some of the other guys before and after. Maybe not Ike Corte is one of the others. Jake Batlala, who upset Michael Carbajal on HBO. But that was Azumah Nelson. They didn't call him the professor for nothing. He knew his way in around that ring. When they talk about ring generalship, for his time, Azumah Nelson mastered ring generalship. And he certainly did 40 years ago today when he knocked out Wilfredo Gomez. And to the last sizzling knockout of this weekend anniversary-wise, probably the more modern one that everybody likes to see. It's the finale between Juan Manuel Marquez and Manny Pacquiao. This is something Juan Manuel Marquez should have been doing all along, because we know anybody who's seen the fights closely knows how the scoring went basically in the 3 fights prior. I said all along, in my humble opinion, he's 3-0. The 3 fights going into this fight, he's 2-0-1. I thought the first fight was scored a draw correctly because Marquez was knocked down all over the place early on. Second fight, I gave it to Marquez, but I could argue either way. Third fight, I thought Marquez won. I think a lot of people did, and most people did too. I'm not saying a lot of them, most of them did. But when it came to this fight, Juan Manuel Marquez blunt said, I'm going to push for the knockout and not leave it to the judges. That's what happened. He floored Pacquiao in the 3rd round. Looked like he was going to cruise his way to victory. Of course, Pacquiao, the warrior, the stand-up Puerto Rican, the Filipino warrior that he is, comes back, floors Marquez in the 5th. Actually had control for most of the 6th round. Had Marquez off balance a little bit until Pacquiao makes a mistake. The perfectly timed right hand right on Pacquiao's chin by Marquez. Pacquiao sleeping. Party is over. I mean, basically, Manny Pacquiao literally face first upside down asleep. Perfectly placed right hand right on the button. Sweet spot knockout. Still the image of the voice of Roy Jones Jr. at ringside doing commentary, basically saying, he's not getting up. He's not getting up. Basically, that was it. And for a career of Juan Manuel Marquez, who was living in the Mexican shadows of guys like Barrera and Morales, trying to chase the greatness of guys like Sanchez and Chavez, Juan Manuel Marquez might have supplanted them too with this win, because neither Barrera or Morales, in my opinion, had a victory remotely like this. And I said all along, for all the Mexican fighters I covered and followed, probably the biggest win a Mexican fighter had since Chavez whacked Taylor out in their first fight eons before that, controversy aside. But the most significant win from Mexico. Juan Manuel Marquez, in my opinion, sort of mismanaged his career in the beginning, but he slowly but surely started to get it all back. He moved up to lightweight to fight Yoel Casamayor and Juan Diaz, 2 naturally bigger men, and stopped them both. I'm talking about he beat, of course, he challenged Floyd Mayweather later on, got shut out, but who doesn't get shut out by Floyd Mayweather? Got the rematch with Juan Diaz. Showed there was no fluke. Got the decision. Got some solid wins over guys like Michael Katsidis. Basically fighting naturally bigger guys to prove himself, and basically prove himself time after time after time. And in my opinion, I think he sent it past Barrera and Morales and has thrust himself as a top 5 all-time great Mexican fighter. When you think of Salvador Sanchez, Julio Cesar Chavez, Ricardo Lopez, and Ruben Olivares, Juan Manuel Marquez is right there. Of course, he went on to have a couple other big wins. Big one, of course, in his career when he beat Mike Alvarado, albeit a little bit of a beat-down version of him. Had a fight against Tim Bradley. But Juan Manuel Marquez was a risk taker and wasn't afraid to take risks. Maybe his, I won't be the word to put this. Maybe the one thing that set him back was when he made the mistake of going to Indonesia to fight Chris John for basically the equivalent of pocket change in a fight he basically, in my opinion, he won the fight, but didn't get the decision. And basically, that sort of set his career back a bit because the boxing intelligentsia sort of didn't view Marquez in the light they did for guys like Barrera and Morales, among many others at that time. He basically had to take the hard road, a la Marvin Hagler, a la Pernell Whitaker, amongst others, to get to that point. And when he ended the Pacquiao quadrilogy with this knockout, he basically got what he worked hard for, the keystone moment of his career, the apex of his career, and he earned it. And of course, for Pacquiao, the career is well chronicled. Recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Finally got the Mayweather fight, which was, 5 years past his expiration date. But it was just a moneymaker nonetheless. I don't think he would have beaten Mayweather 5 years earlier because this style was tailor-made for Floyd. Don't think for one second Floyd Mayweather saw Juan Manuel Marquez's fights with Pacquiao and not know how to beat him. All thing was done was for financial ploy. We all know this. But Pacquiao's place in history is secure. Of course, in 2019, stunned Keith Thurman at age 41 to win a belt. Basically solidified his place among the all-time greats. Is now first ballot Hall of Famer. Well deserved. And of course, I conclude with this topic because it was another ones we're on Wild of Boxing is the Hall of Fame voting. Manny Pacquiao, Michael Nunn, and Vinny Pazienza are in. A lot of hubbub about, Pacquiao was a no-brainer. I mean, that was a no-brainer. A lot of hubbub about the other two guys. When they put Arturo Gatti in the Hall of Fame, they basically shot up credibility as it was. Plain and simple. I mean, nothing against Arturo Gatti. He was an exciting fighter, but, do we talk about Arturo Gatti amongst the all-time greats? That credibility was shot. Bottom line is one thing. I agree with some people on this. The case is that there's a lack of consistency that's going on when it comes to Hall of Fame voting, and that's where it needs to end. Nigel Benn, Premier, and Chris Eubank, Premier middleweights of England, I don't see them on the ballot. Sumbu Calabe, who Michael Nunn and Mike McCallum beat, and they're both Hall of Famers, I don't see them on the ballot. What gives? And I mean, there's a fight to Michael Nunn and Vinny Pazienza. Nothing against them. It's the process and how the process was basically shot years back when they decided to put Arturo Gatti in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, there's a slight against Arturo Gatti. But when that happened, all can of worms were opened. Now it's time to reconfigure what the criteria is for the Boxing Hall of Fame, because it's not the standard like, say, the NFL, the NBA, or baseball, because it's a whole different standard. Probably a lower standard than some of the other sports. But there needs to be new criteria set, because some of the guys I see on the ballots and the people who are nominated, there's some glaring omissions, and that needs some cleaning up a little bit. But hopefully we can get to that point, because there are others like the three I mentioned that rightfully belong and deserve to be there. If you want to put guys like Gatti and Pazienza in there, might be time to rethink the process. Not a side against Gatti or Pazienza. It's about the process. I'll talk about that in due time. But on that note, I will wrap up this Monday night edition of Sirhan on X. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful 9th of December, 2024. Until then, take care of yourselves. Good night. And always remember, always, always, always make self-care a priority. Good night. Take care of yourselves, and God bless.